Hello, I am Jim Lurkey, owner of Safety Connections, and I welcome you as a new employee to Sohn Manufacturing. I am going through a checklist that I will ask you to check each one, and at the bottom left, when completed, you'll sign and date. And when I am on site, I will sign and date and make sure you get a copy as well. So here we go. First on the list, lockout, tagout. What do you need to know? You need to know that there are two employees. One that's called an affected employee, and that's anyone who does not perform lockout, tagout. Could be myself, could be operators who don't actually perform lockout, tagout. Those folks that actually perform lockout, tagout, they're called authorized. They're the authorized to lock and tag out. Everyone else that's affected, hands off. No cutting off a lock, no, nothing. Hands off. Number two, safety data sheets. First of all, it's known as your right to know. Where are they located? They are located on the desktop of computers, available to you at any time. What else you need to know about safety data sheets? Everything and anything you need to know about a chemical is in a safety data sheet. Examples are company name, trade name, telephone number, first aid, how do you treat something, how to handle it, how to store it, how to use it, how to dispose of it, personal protective equipment requirements, hazardous spill, every single thing you need to know. Next, first aid supplies are available throughout the plant. If in doubt, please ask. Emergency action plan. Now, what do you all need to know? First and foremost, if there's a medical emergency, make certain, if able, to make sure somebody in management gets to know so that we know help is needed and required. Number two, the powers that be, including first aid, CPR folks trained, can make that determination. Next, fire. Fire, it's either we're going to be notified through a page or verbally we'll be notified. Exit the nearest exit, and that's always your primary. Secondary is the next nearest exit, but you always go out the safest nearest exit. And where do you want to meet? It is called behind the red garage, west side of the building is where everyone meets. Tornado. Tornado, we report to the areas, shipping, receiving, bathroom, and or also what's called the demo room. Tornado. Hazardous spill, we got to make certain that we notify our supervisors or a person in charge, and the purpose and reason for that is that they're the ones that purchased the chemical or are involved in it, so they would know best how to clean it up. So why the supervisor? Again, first and foremost, it's a decision-making process. They got to make sure no employees are in jeopardy. Two, if inside the building, they got to do everything they can to contain it, to not allow it to get to the drain. If it's outside, they don't want it seeping into the ground, if you will. Next on the list is bomb threat. Everyone today has a cell phone. So if a call came in, we asked to think of these following steps. Listen, that's just gathering any and all information from whoever that caller might be. When they're done speaking, dial immediately 911. Notify a person in charge at your plant, and you should evacuate or must evacuate immediately as if you were involved in a fire. That is bomb threat. Next, we're going to talk about harassment. There's zero tolerance for harassment, whether it's sexual or otherwise. Any gloating, stalking, anything in writing that's offensive in a sexual manner is not tolerated and will not be. Any undermining or demeaning anyone because they brought up a safety concern, because of anything they brought up, and in return, you're retaliated against, is not acceptable. Name calling, any kind of belittling is not acceptable. Now, it doesn't say that a supervisor management person can't tell you to go to work, by the way. So keep that in mind. The next one is violence in the workplace. Violence in the workplace, the bottom line is it's zero tolerance. There's two types. One is verbal, one is physical. Verbal is anything and everything from somebody making a comment you're going to pay. Let's step outside and solve this right now. All right, I'm going to wait till after work and we're going to meet you at so-and-so. That is a verbal threat. There's zero tolerance for that. And we got to make sure the powers that be, all right, are notified. If there's a physical interaction between two people, whether it's pushing, shoving, number one is never get in the middle. Number two is to stop it from escalating in the first place. One thing is coaching and mentoring, but the bottom line is, in order to avoid it from escalating, we should call 911 and let the authorities deal with that. That is emergency action plan. Accident reporting. Any and all accidents should be reported immediately. And if not followed, flags are going to go up everywhere. So be aware. It's a win for you and it's a win for the company because if you notify us, we in return can put safety procedures, policies, and further or enhance our training to avoid it in the future from happening again. Safety glasses are a requirement. A composite safety toe shoe is required. Hearing protection is voluntary. Remember, when putting hearing protection in, up around the back of your head, pull your ear up and back. Seat the plug, all right? And let go with your top hand so that you get a proper fit in your ear to protect you. When you're done using it, always put it in a baggie and seal it so you keep it clean to avoid an infection. Safety glasses, always take glasses off, leaning forward and take them off away from you. And when you set them down, keep them in a clean, safe area. And if you need, them cleaned, use a cleaner to make sure you keep them clean. It's very important. Next, lift truck. Only qualified lift truck drivers who are trained are allowed to drive lift trucks. Chains and slings must do a pre-inspection before use. A chain, for an example, is we're looking for any stretching, cracking, splitting. Anything deformed, whether it is the hook or the spring clip. And make sure it's got a tag that's readable so we know what the capacity is. On a sling, we must be able to read the engraved capacity. And you're also looking for any cuts, frays, never used, by the way, around something that's heat, because that could burn through. And the other thing you're looking for is any tearing or stitching that's coming through that's orangish or reddish in color. At that point, they must be cut up and thrown out. Next, proper lifting. We encourage feet apart, shoulder width. Head and back as straight as possible. When lifting, keep your arms close to yourself and always lift with your legs. If in doubt, we have hand jacks or other material to move stuff with. Don't wreck your back. All right? That's first and foremost. Teamwork, critical. We need to work together, respect each other as well. No jewelry. That's pretty clear. Guarding. Anything that has a guard, we don't tamper. If a guard is damaged, we need to let our supervisor or person in charge know of that. Fall protection. If we're going to move off of a ladder, fall protection is required when we're up above 4 feet or higher. And that is in general industry. And that is when you move off of a ladder, by the way. What also would be required at that point is fall protection training, including fit testing of the actual harness, including an inspection of the harness before each and every use. Daily inspections. Anything from a hand tool to power tool, a pre-use inspection is required. Keep that in mind. And that includes cords. Okay? Any kind of electric cord should always be inspected each and every use. and we're looking for cracks or splits or tears, or on the prong, there always should be a 3-prong plug, all right? And that includes the ground. Any damage, we should notify our supervisor, or the person in charge, if you will. Face shields required if ever grinding. Always know where your exits are. And when we talk about that, we always talk about primary being your nearest and thereafter other exits. Our mission is to foster the right safety culture with everyone being responsible. If you don't know where your tornado shelter is, we must make sure to ask and verify that. How do we communicate emergencies? Both through speaker and verbally. Contractors, subcontractors ever come in a plant and they're not following our guidelines, we must make sure they're made aware. And an easier way is at least make sure that we tell our supervisor or person in charge. If I'm ever in doubt, I must always ask first. There's no gray areas when it comes to safety. Training in any and all jobs that we're required to perform. If uncertain, we shouldn't go off on a job on our own. We need to ask those questions and make sure we're trained appropriately. Introductions. I always like to make sure that you know somebody and you've been introduced to others. Use of knives. One of the things I suggest always, where you hold and you're always using a knife, cutting away from all body parts. When you're done cutting, always place the knife away from the edge on the table and always retract the knife. Critical. Second opinion policy. A second opinion safety policy is this. There's a difference between two employees on a safety corrective action or a request. If there's that difference of opinion, we're required to respect each other, no retaliation. Or if it's a supervisor or person in charge, we could be subject to discipline. So we get somebody else in management or myself involved, one of my teammates involved. All right, so we put an extra set of eyes and ears at the situation for resolution. Next on the list, safety is a condition of employment. All the ground rules and guidelines must be followed if we're going to meet our goal every day. Grinding wheels must be within an 1/8 and a quarter, 1/8 on the bottom, 1/4 on the top of a stand-up grinding wheel. So keep that in mind. I just share that just from a safety perspective. Accountability and discipline is part of each and every program, no different here at Sohn Manufacturing. Stretching, there's a handout. The bottom line for stretching, I just want everyone to know, encourage before the start of the shift, and if time allows, during the course of the shift, to help us to prepare for those minor unprojected things that could happen, if you will, to help offset that without an injury happening. How do we communicate? There's a handout. And the 3 biggest things I like to let everyone know is treat each other with respect. And the way that we do that is we communicate in a caring, kind, asking, helping way. Nothing different than that. Arc flash. What everyone needs to know is no one goes inside an electrical panel. If you do go inside an electrical panel, no one is to ever take off the cover that goes around those breaker switches, because you must be a certified electrician in order to do so. Exit locations, everyone should know that answer. Make sure you do. Cost of an accident. I use a thing called Safety Pays. An example is $18,000 some odd cost for a workers' comp. Cost in direct and indirect dollars over $1 million in sales to make up for that. I always like people to know that, because we can't write that stuff off. It is what that is. So our decisions matter and choices. Hazardous spill. Anytime there's a hazardous spill, we got to make sure the person in charge or supervisor is notified, because they're the ones that are most familiar with the chemicals. Bloodborne pathogens. First of all, everyone needs to understand that we're the one that carries that. Whether it's phlegm, whether it's blood, you name it. The bottom line is one thing, we cleaning up our own, using a disinfectant, that's a must, 10%. And if it's somebody else's, we got to make sure that we're all using what's called universal precautions, whether it's the glove, a dustpan, all right? And they're disposed of and management's notified. So we do follow our control plan with bloodborne. Safety meetings are normally going to be held once a month, so you're aware of that. Chocks, semi-trailers are a requirement. Always keep your hearing protection clean. Safety goals, the same as an employee, the same as a company. The way we come to work is the expected, that's the way we go home. Near miss reporting, something happens, no injury attached. We want those reported so we can take the corrective action so nothing happens and somebody falls to an injury. Fire extinguisher training. Fire extinguishers are voluntary to use if and when a fire happens. First and foremost, if there's a fire and you're suspect whether you can fight it or not, you need to get out, period. Most important. Next, if we do use a fire extinguisher, the acronym PASS stands for this. Pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire about 6 to 8 feet away. All right? You squeeze the handle, and the last S, we sweep at the base of the fire. Pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep at the base of the fire. Always have your back to the exit if inside the building. If outside the building, you always have the wind at your back so that it's blowing the fire away from you. So keep those things in mind. Next, power tools, hand tools, if we're uncertain how to use them, we need to be trained. Ladders, pre-inspection every time is required. We're looking at the rungs, the framework, the feet, okay? Any dents, including a label, that must be on, and it must be readable for capacity. 3 points of contact when going up and down. No carrying things up and down because we have to have 3 points of contact. Step ladders, avoid the top 2 steps. On extension ladders, never step on the top 3. So keep that in mind. Next on the list, lifting. Just a guideline, but it's a guideline. Keep in mind 50 pounds. We need help. We get help. Use of equipment, whatever is needed, we got to be notified, meaning supervisor or person in charge. Staying out of harm's way of any kind of moving objects from machines to you name it is required. So keep that in mind. Walking, working surfaces. There's a lot of different things in our plant, from machines to pedestrians to lift trucks. All right. Up and down, we talk about ladders as a walking surface. Floors can be uneven. There can be cracks. And we should always be looking where we're going before we make any movements, whether it's hands, body parts, or feet. So keep that in mind. Look, listen, and think first. Next on the list, OSHA fines. Federal government, first and foremost, I got to tell you, we can't write it off as a business. Number 2, fines can be just a regular fine, can be up to $15,000 and something. For a repeat or willful, can be up to $156,259. Comes off the bottom line, folks, so keep that in mind. And a copy of that's available to you. If unsure, we must always ask a person in charge. Seat belts, anything that has a seat belt, including our vehicles, got to be worn. Maintenance is only be done by a professional that has a maintenance background. Operating procedures, any and all, if in doubt, we should not be operating. We should make sure we know what we're doing before we do it. Ergonomics, we encourage the stretching. We encourage switching our hands off if that's possible, moving our feet instead of keeping in one position. Proper lifting techniques Keep all those things in mind, if you will. Doctor-treated case. If ever there is one, we need to be notified immediately, and the company will make every effort to keep you working with restricted duty or what's known as alternate duty work. Employee assistance program. All right. If somebody's in need, has personal issues, let somebody in the management, HR know about it, because obviously we want to get you the help that's needed. Any corrective action needs to go through the supervisor or person in charge. Your number one responsibility as an employee is safety is priority number one. Cigarette smoking. There is a location for cigarette smoking that everyone needs to be aware of. And that is by the hut, which is outside by the shipping dock area. Last on our list is COVID. Every company today is required to have a COVID policy. Ours, like most employers, are following the CDC guidelines. And here's what we need to know. If sick, the guidelines are to stay home. 2, if you want to verify that you have COVID, obviously there's the tests they're out there, test kits to verify personally. What are some of those other guidelines? Wash your hands more often than not. Distance yourself from others if possible. Use sanitizer. So all those little things that we can all do to help ourselves. And I just ask you, keep those things in mind. Next time I pay a visit, I will try to definitely look you up. We'll take a few minutes, all right, to review your checklist. Make sure I let you sign and date, and I'll sign and date as well upon the time when I'm there next, which should be soon, by the way. So with that, make good choices. And whatever you do, know one thing, I care about you, and make each and every day your choice to be safe. Take care. Thank you.